Without wasting any time, let me get straight to the point. Has India's foreign policy in the last 3 odd years evolved into a sharper, more focused, more effective tool to expand not only India's footprint, but actual clout at the big boys' table? That's the central question tonight. The reason we are debating this tonight is because recently, India has shown a little more assertion in backing up sometimes difficult positions pertaining to long-standing issues with our immediate neighbors, be it Pakistan or China, but also to our friendly nations like the US. We saw the immediate response by the MEA yesterday when Nikki Haley tried to dip the American toe in the already muddied waters in South Asia. The response was curt and quick. It was respectful, no doubt, but it was curt. So staring down China when needed on Arunachal or on the Dalai Lama's movement within Indian boundaries, be it Pakistan or the sharp verbal reiteration of India's stance on Gilgit and Baltistan, all these are the empirical signs that India, Narendra Modi, is a more muscular, more assertive form of talking politely, but also carrying a big stick. Are we witnessing a gradual but certain change in how Indian diplomacy is practiced? And a related question, if the answer to the earlier question is yes, then is it too early to declare Modi's foreign policy better suited to the needs and aspirations of a country that wants and demands a bigger share of the pie globally? That's what we are discussing tonight on The Nation at 9. Before I introduce the panel, take a look at this.
Be it America, China or Pakistan, no longer will India be bullied or coerced diplomatically. Of late, there has been a renewed effort to carry out diplomacy with an iron fist. China warned India of allowing Dalai Lama to visit Arunachal Pradesh.
印方不顾中方的关切，执意安排达赖到中印边界东段争议地区活动，严重伤害中方利益和中印关系。中方对此坚决反对，并将向印方提出严正的交涉。
This was India's response.
जहाँ तक ये बाउंड्री का जो इश्यूज है तो मैं तो हमेशा कहता हूँ कि हमारे बाउंड्री जो है चाइना के साथ हम लोग शेयर नहीं करता है हम लोग बाउंड्री शेयर करते हैं तिब्बत के साथ में
As His Holiness was honoured in our border state, he expresses his gratitude.
Certainly, I am longest guest of Indian government.
So what would you say?
Right from the beginning, when I reached Kansamani, the Indian government take full care about me.
Netas unite to send the dragon a stern message.
Each and every inch of the Kashmir, even Pak-occupied Kashmir, that has been illegally occupied by Pakistan. And each and every inch of the Kashmir belongs to India.
Over in the parliament, the government was asked about Pakistan mulling integrating Gilgit-Baltistan as its own district. And this was India's reply.
सारे का सारा कश्मीर हमारा है। पाक अधिकृत कश्मीर हमारा है। जहां हुए बलिदान मुखर्जी वो कश्मीर हमारा है। जो कश्मीर हमारा है वो सारे का सारा है।
What the Minister for External Affairs has said is a statement which has a futuristic bearing considering the interest of the nation. What Dr. Abdullah has said is only an eye on the upcoming poll that he is contesting.
Meanwhile, America hinted at a possible intervention by Trump to resolve the Indo-Pak issues.
That will be something that you will see members of the National Security Council participate in, but I also wouldn't be surprised if the President participates in that as well.
But India puts its foot down, saying it must be done bilaterally.
If and when India needs that kind of intervention, we are old enough to ask for it. Until then, everyone else should just butt out. It's our problem and we will deal.
As India stirs deftly in international diplomacy, a superpower emerges.
India is asserting itself on the international platform through its foreign policy. be it ensuring that the United States of America sets the record straight on the issue of Nikki Haley, talking about U.S. intervening in the matter and with regards to India and Pakistan, or for that matter, snubbing China when it comes to allowing Dalai Lama to visit Sravan and Arunachal Pradesh. Also responding in Parliament to a question on Pakistan trying to make Gilgit-Baltistan its fifth province, something that India will surely not allow. Deputy journalist Jyotir Moinat in New Delhi, Geeta Mohan for NewsX.
So as India flexes its diplomatic muscle globally, it is not only staring down China, it is also befittingly giving a verbal lashing to Pakistan on the issue of Gilgit-Baltistan and all other outstanding issues, especially the Kashmir issue as well. The U.S. intervention hint was tackled deftly yesterday, and we understand there could be some rethinking on the part of the Americans after Nikki Haley said what she said. But tonight, before we go into the panel, in fact, let me just introduce the panel right away. It's an eminent panel. Professor Madhav Nalapat joins us, editorial director of the Sunday Guardian. Vivek Katju, former MEA secretary, will be joining us tonight. Dr. Subranian Swamy, Rajya Sabha MP of the BJP. Saurabh Shukla, editor-in-chief of the newsmobile.in. And also Dr. Sravan, Kumar, spokesperson of the Congress party, joins us from Hyderabad. Vivek Katju, let me start with you. After years of inconsistent responses to China, what can I only call diktats as concerning Arunachal. We'll take China first because I know it is important. Do you believe that during the last 3 years there has been a visible, consistent shift from previous sort of engagements in handling these issues like Baltistan, like the issue of Dalai Lama with China, even friendly allies like the US, in the way we talk to them? Would you say there's a discernible change, or would that be too much right now to say?
I think that starting from 2016, which is last year, there is a more confident approach to foreign policy and a desire to make it a little more assertive and to say things as they need to be said. Initially, I had the impression that Prime Minister Modi was wanting to see how the ground lay. He made approaches which were fairly traditional approaches with regard to Pakistan.
There were some audacious moves as well. At the time, people couldn't understand why.
No, to my mind, he was reaching out to Pakistan to see if there could be a modus vivendi with them. With China, you recollect that he really spread the red carpet for the Chinese president during his visit here. He sought to build a personal relationship. But then, when he realized that diplomacy is a hard game and has to be played in a tough world, I think he shifted course in 2016. And certainly with regard to Pakistan, from the middle of 2016, there is this more assertive approach. And with China, after the experience of the NSG and Masood Azhar, I think the signal has been sent out that, look, if you want to play tough, then two can play the game. Exactly.
That's what I want to ask Professor Nalapat about as Dr. Subranian Swamy also joins us. But first to you, Dr. Nalapat, Professor Nalapat, the fact that Professor Katju also mentioned, wherever it is needed, the kind of game that needs to be played with different players, do you think the Modi government has adjusted suitably? Because we have seen some stronger or far more muscular, as someone put it right now, assertions about all standing issues as well.
You know, the advantage that Prime Minister Modi has got is that he is in full command of his government. He is in full command of his party. In that sense, Xi Jinping or Vladimir Putin, for example, are instances of other leaders who have got full command of the government and party.
There's one power center and one power center only.
Exactly. Now, whether it's Nawaz Sharif, poor man, he only commands what the army allows him to command. Manmohan Singh, as we all know, commanded what the high command of his party wanted him to command. So they had a problem on the world stage. Prime Minister Modi doesn't have that problem, and I agree very much with Ambassador Katju that yes, I think he took about a year or two to get his diplomatic feet, in a sense, firmly established, and now it's very, very clear that he understands that you have to go in for a situation in which you show that you're not going to just keel over and make concessions that are not at all reciprocated in return.
Dr. Swamy, that would lead me to ask you that question, that in the last 3 years, do you see a visible departure, and the departure resulting in the kind of success an emerging giant like India needs? Would you say that's a departure from previous UP administration and the way they exercise their diplomatic muscles, whether it's with China or friends like the US? Would you like to chime in here? Do you think the consistency has returned, something we lacked for about 10 to 15 years on the global stage?
Well, we in our party, I would say we have hardliners, the harder liners, and the hardest liners. And I would belong to the hardest liners. And
No
I'm
doubt.
happy that Modi has moved from hardline to harder liners. The surgical strike is an example. And in most issues, we have taken a harder and harder line. But the fact of the matter is that we have to understand that every country has its own calculus on how to deal with others. In the case of Trump's America, it will be purely give and take. And it's not enough to be ideologically close to the Americans or, compliant or rather agreeing to their certain policy changes in where it deals with, say, Japan and so on. It's more the strategic questions, where do we fit in? Are we with the Americans when it comes to a conflict between the United States and China, for example? Those things are not clarified yet. But what
you believe that
said,
opinion
I
is still
agree,
being formulated within the government, or do you believe there's a broad understanding
Yes,
that we will approach each problem as it comes?
I have a disagreement.
Yeah, yes.
I have a disagreement with my External Affairs Ministry on how to deal with China. I think we should have a much more dialogue, much more dialogue than we have had, and that dialogue should be based on mutual interests rather than what we want from them.
Since we are China right now, Dr. Swamy, I would like to mention one thing here, and Professor Nalapat, you know, Kissinger tried détente at a time when it was thought to be a completely audacious idea, but he made it work. They were very clear on the terms of it. They had to do business with China. Do you believe the harder line, in some cases, as Dr. Swamy says, with the US, and a far more engaging line with China, he calls himself the hardest of the liners. Do you believe, which way going forward do you believe would be the ideal to deal with China first?
Well, I'd like to point out that Dr. Kissinger gave huge concessions to the Chinese side. At that point in time, China was a very poor country. It was a backward country. It had, frankly, very little to challenge the Soviet Union. But in order to ensure that the United States could successfully challenge the Soviet Union, a large number of concessions were given to China. The point is, the Chinese were very smart in grabbing all these concessions and always demanding more. And in fact, that is a staple of Chinese diplomacy. They say that a concession is really not a concession. It's a reasonable demand. And once you give them that, they say, well, you're being unreasonable. You have to give them a bigger demand. And so you have to be very, very careful when dealing with the Chinese.
If you can reason with even a foe, that's what diplomacy really is. If you find a common ground, do you believe that the harder policy towards the US in particular, and this is a US question, because like I said, the Trump administration is still finding its bearings. They have not really crystallized on what exactly they want to do or would like to do here. India clearly not giving them any space. Yesterday's comment from the MEA was respectful, but dare I say it, very curt.
No, I think what was said had to be said, and the sooner it was said, the better. That the US should be under no illusions that India is going to change its policy, which is rooted in bilateralism vis-a-vis Pakistan. We've suffered before 1971 with the world muddying the waters and with our being at the short end of the stick on this. So I think on this, we were absolutely right, but having said that, there is vast business to be done with the United States. Whether we like it or not, it is the world's most preeminent power at the moment and will remain so for some time to come. But as far as China is concerned, my only point is this, that we can't overlook the growing Chinese nexus with Pakistan, and we are the target of that nexus.
And I'll come to that, and it's a very important point you've raised. But I want to go to Dr. Sravan Kumar here, because Dr. Sravan Kumar, the feeling, the consensus is that during the last 3 years, somewhat of a change has occurred. It's a change for the better. And you were rather weak diplomatically when the UPA was in power. Same issues existed then, but India's position was not as muscular. Would you buy into that premise?
You know, first of all, let me mention that the America or any other country, as far as India-Pakistan issues are concerned, they are purely bilateral, and there is no role for any third party to intervene and mediate. And that we need to very vocally
I think the government has done that
tell to the
yesterday.
world and tell to America, tell to everybody that, you know, it's purely a bilateral issue and then there's no need. Second point is, today, if America has dared enough again to come forward and said that we would be mediating between Pakistan and India to decrease the tensions, that is precisely because I think our government has given them an opportunity.
Now, that's a very contentious claim, and I'm glad you're making that claim.
Policy or because of a kind of a foreign policy, the government, particularly the Modi's government, has given an opportunity for America.
You made a sweeping statement, understood. But on what basis are you saying the government gave the Americans a handle?
I cannot hear.
Most reviewers are saying Nikki Haley perhaps wasn't even aware.
I cannot hear you. I cannot hear you.
All right. Can you hear me now, sir? All right. We'll rectify that in just a bit.
I want to come in here.
Yeah, 1 second. Saurabh, I'm coming to you in 1 second. In 1 second, I'll come to you. But Vivek Katju, quick response on that. On what basis can anyone say the Trump administration got a handle from the Indian government to say what they did?
Of course they didn't. Yeah. But and let's not forget that the American presidents, whenever they come in, they always try this gambit. Yes. Every new administration does. After all, Holbrooke initially, the thought was
Bill Clinton in the early 90s.
Yes, and that Holbrooke was to be special envoy for South Asia, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India. And I must say it was to the credit of Dr. Manmohan Singh's government that they scotched it absolutely. And therefore he was left with PAK-F.
So clearly, Dr. Kumar, when you say you're trying to make a political point here, we're trying to rise above slightly petty politics. And when you say the government gave the Trump administration a handle, I think there'll be very few takers for that line of argument. Are you just not willing to concede, Dr. Kumar, that in terms of dealing with China, Pakistan mostly, and even the US to an extent, many people today believe the approach by the Modi government is not only far more effective, but also brings about the desire for India to play a bigger role at the international table, something that we've been wanting for a very long time, but hardly have gotten the chance to do so. Dr. Kumar, very quickly, then we'll go to Saurabh.
I cannot hear.
All right, I don't think he can hear me right now. Saurabh, you wanted to come in at this point. Go ahead, Saurabh.
You know, I want to say that while the government's policy has been muscular, surgical strike, as Dr. Swamy said, is a great example of how India has crossed the line, given Pakistan a message. But the message has to be consistent. I want to talk about the US example, for instance. You had a visit of the Foreign Secretary just a short while back who came back with assurances. And just after that, you had a statement coming out of Nikki Haley. Certainly, there is a disconnect somewhere. We have to be more proactive than we actually are. And I want to get in here that you have a government, you have a Prime Minister who has a great elbow room. This is the time for some bold decisions. While we have done the right diplomatic thing by telling the US that it's a bilateral issue, but it requires much more than that, because these are early days of Trump administration. If we don't engage them really at the highest level, we run the risk of actually dealing with the real issue of Pakistan's terrorism.
A far more proactive strategy from New Delhi.
And that's what India has to do. The political...
You're saying we're not doing enough. We should perhaps try and utilize the fact that the Trump administration hasn't really settled in yet. Are you saying we should go in when the iron is hot?
I would say we cannot leave it to MEA mandarins alone.
Interesting point.
You have great political leaders. Obviously, you had a vacuum of sorts because External Affairs Sushma Swaraj, Minister, was unwell. But now that she's back in the MEA, she should be fronting it rather than diplomats doing it.
Okay,
because
what do you
there
think
is
of that
only
idea?
a limited
Far
thing
more-
which a diplomat
Okay.
can do. The political leadership is strong enough. They should be at the forefront of
I have a
India's
feeling
diplomatic
Ambassador Katju would not really
activities.
back that, but I want to get Professor Nalapat's view and then Dr. Swamy's first. Yes.
No, I'd like to say that there is a huge bureaucracy in the US as in India, and the bureaucracies do need to engage with each other. Now, we still, are waiting for an Assistant Secretary of State for South Asia, for example.
Hasn't been appointed yet.
We are still looking for directors of several of the bureaus. So the fact is the Trump administration hasn't made these appointments yet. So in one sense, it's very difficult to know whom to talk to on the other side. And secondly, I think the MEA has done a fairly good job of reaching out to its counterparts in the United States and building up relations. But there's no doubt that the key person in this, on the Indian side, is going to be Prime Minister Modi.
Not the External Affairs Minister?
The fact is, it's Prime Minister Modi who's the leader of the country. And when you're dealing with a country as big as the United States, you need to make policies that are so important that, frankly, only a strong Prime Minister can make them. Advantage Modi has got is, one, he has shown the will to take very bold and strong steps, and two, he has the political capital to take big steps. And with the United States, you must take big steps.
Dr. Swamy, do you agree with Saurabh's opinion that perhaps we should be far more proactive and our best political faces, our biggest names, if you will, the Prime Minister himself, the External Affairs Minister, need to lead the charge if we want to have an advantage in dealing with a Trump presidency, which after all, if you know what I'm talking about, might turn out in India's advantage in more ways than one, sir?
Well, first, we must get used to the fact that we shouldn't take every sentence that the Americans utter with such seriousness as we do. The Chinese President Xi Jinping is about to reach Washington.
Yes.
And just before his visit, Trump says, I will deal with North Korea the way I want if the Chinese don't come on board.
Yeah.
I mean, that's saying to hell with you. Now, that's the kind of idiom that they use, this Trump administration, and we shouldn't get carried away with it. And the Chinese have not reacted to it. We must know one thing. There is no point in sweet talking with the Americans, because that's not going to get you results. What's going to get you results is what you're going to give them, especially what they want. And they want us to partner in the anti-terrorist war in the Middle East. And we have to find some way where we have to answer that question. And there are a variety of options, but certainly I don't think the United States is going to change one bit with regard to our
I completely agree on the point, Dr. Swamy, that you can't take everything the Trump administration says at face value, whether it's President Trump himself or any of his aides, because like I said, the administration is in a flux right now. They're fighting everything as far as domestic scandals are concerned. But I just want to quote what the Chinese have said in this particular case regarding India. You mentioned, Dr. Swamy, that they haven't reacted to Trump's statement. But here, Dr. Sravan, Kumar, Saurabh, Shukla, as well as Professor Nalapat, here's what the Chinese have said about the Dalai Lama movement. And this language, of course, will make it very clear what their intentions really are. The Chinese Foreign Office spokesperson said China firmly opposes this move and will lodge representations with the Indian side. China's stand on the eastern part of the borders is consistent and clear. It goes on saying China will firmly take necessary measures to defend its territorial sovereignty, and it goes on about legitimate rights and interests as well. So very different reaction as far as the Dalai Lama's movement within Indian boundaries are concerned. And when Trump says, toe my line or go to hell, not a peep.
Well, if President Trump were to meet the Dalai Lama, and there are a number of suggestions in the United States that he should meet the Dalai Lama, if he does that and does something which, frankly, Angela Merkel is too scared to do, Theresa May is too scared to do, most of the prime ministers in Europe, almost all of them, are too scared to do, then I think the Chinese are definitely not going to resort to silence. They're going to react. The Dalai Lama is a very, very sensitive issue for them. But the problem is that, so far as India is concerned, the Dalai Lama has been here for nearly 60 years. I mean, he's become almost a part of the dialogue and discourse here. As he himself says, he's now Indian.
Absolutely. Would you agree, Dr. Sravan Kumar? And I want to go to Saurabh also on the China bit here, but Dr. Sravan Kumar, apologies.
And I want to add here.
1 second. Apologies, Dr. Sravan Kumar, for the technical difficulties. You missed part of the show here. But what I wanted to ask you earlier before we got cut off was, aren't you making a political point in this debate when you say that the Trump administration got a handle really because the Indian administration is not doing enough? That's a purely political brownie point you're trying to score, sir. It has no basis in empirical evidence. Like we agreed on the panel already, Dr. Sravan Kumar, the Trump administration hasn't really formulated their policy on major issues. And the issues between India and Pakistan are perhaps the biggest issues concerning the world today. We should really take them on face value.
Athar Khan, I think your question is very pertinent. I have not made any attempt to compare the functioning or administration of Trump and vis-a-vis Modi. What we said is, in fact, one of the panelists, I don't remember who was the person who said that every president of America, whenever they take the reins of as a president, would make these kind of statements. So what is so special about Trump's administration making these statements? Fine. The question, but then if that is so general statement, then why are we sitting in this studio and then talking about it as a very important matter, if it's a routine statement? It's a very important statement. It's a serious statement as far as the Indian foreign policy is concerned. And there are certain lacunas as far as the Indian government is concerned with reference to conceiving a comprehensive, a cohesive foreign policy. So therefore, we have to talk about them. If we don't talk about where we have failed, then we are doing injustice to the people and also not helping the government of India to come out.
But you won't concede, Dr. Kumar, that
I think there is a
Dr. Kumar, respectfully, you will not concede that on some issues, especially with issues dealing with China, with Pakistan, the Modi government seems to have found their bearing, and they seem to have found firm footing on which this new assertive, muscular policy can be executed without really stepping on too many toes and getting India what India needs.
Athar Khan, I think we should now specifically talk about what Nikki Haleys has mentioned, that they wanted to mediate between India and Pakistan. So let's confine the discussion to that.
But hasn't Nikki Haley got enough blowback? I mean, these are reports suggesting that Nikki Haley has gotten enough blowback on that. I won't call it a gaffe really, but perhaps she got ahead of herself. No, go ahead, complete your sentence. I'll come to you, yes.
Atharji, let me...
Yes.
Atharji, let me complete. Yeah. See, there is a reason why I'm making this statement. Right from the, Modi's took over as the Prime Minister, their entire foreign policy, it is a foreign travel policy but not a foreign policy. They have never come out with a very appropriate framework of a dialogue between Pakistan and India. Rather, it appeared as if they never believed in a dialogue. Rather, it was a sorry, shallow kind of a diplomacy, shallow gifting kind of a diplomacy, or an unprecedented visits to Nawaz Sharif, and then, talking to, people whom we consider as terrorists in the Pakistan, and suddenly coming up with a surgical strike and sensationalizing it. We have projected the entire issue of India and Pakistan to the world, that this is the only problem as far as the foreign policy is concerned.
I want to get Dr. Swamy to respond to this.
And therefore, the America felt that there is a need, because there is a problem.
There are holes I could punch in that theory, sir, but I'm not going to do it. Dr. Swamy, please respond.
I see, the question is, we have to measure it in concrete terms. There's been no reversal for India in anything. And I don't think that the UPA government achieved anything at all. The nuclear bomb deal, the nuclear energy deal that they did is already now in tatters. There's hardly any functioning on that. I don't think they have anything to show for it. On the other hand, we have very quietly built a very strong base in Afghanistan, and we have opened developed a port in Iran, just next to the Chinese port in Pakistan. There are many things that we have not boasted about, we have not made it public, but we have done it, which the previous government didn't do, and just abusing us and saying that all we do is travel and all that. Those are very, I don't think I'd like to respond to those comments.
All right, that's fair enough. Before I get back to Dr. Kumar, Saurabh Shukla wanted to make a point. Go ahead, Saurabh, then I'll come back to my studio guests. I have questions on Pakistan and Gilgit-Baltistan as well. Hold on. Saurabh Shukla first.
I just had this point on the China issue. I think on China, we have done the right thing, which a lot of the previous government hesitated to do. We have told Chinese that Dalai Lama is a welcome guest here. Earlier, we would actually cancel every time there was a mention of a visit by Dalai Lama. It's a great thing that India has done. It's purely based on reciprocity because obviously, despite India's strong objections, China has not done anything on be it Masood Azhar issue or NSG, despite giving us assurance. So I think we should be consistent on that. One of the problems with our foreign policy in the past has been that we have been inconsistent. This is a great thing that India has done. Now that they have taken the giant leap and crossed the wall in a way, we should stick to it. It's a stride in India. You have to, people respect. If you want to be a leader, you have to think and act like one. And I'm glad that India is doing that on its China policy.
All right, on Gilgit-Baltistan and of course the general question in Pakistan as well, many people have criticized the way initially this government handled it. There was a lot of criticism why ISI people came over after Pathankot happened. There was a lot of talk about the shawl, sari diplomacy not really working. But do you also see a hardening of a stance as far as Pakistan is concerned by what the External Affairs Minister has said, by what the Defense Minister previously had said, our position, reiteration on Gilgit-Baltistan, all these issues? Do you believe that even now, in terms of Pakistan, that evolution really of the policy, there seems to be a crystallization of the kind of hardening of stance that was necessary and has been executed by this government?
Well, if you step back, Mr. Modi went to Pakistan in Christmas Day 2015. Pathankot happened immediately thereafter. I think even then he tried to rescue the kind of positivity that he had sought to impart to the relationship, and I, for one, read the Pakistani team, including the ISI officers, visit to India for investigations as part of that process. But the iron seems to have entered his soul. After Nawaz Sharif and the Pakistani army went all out to pin India down following the Kashmir agitation, which took place in the wake of the Burhan Wani killing.
Yes.
And that is the time when there is a clear shift, starting from July of last year, a clear shift in Mr. Modi's position on Pakistan. And that is the time when a more aggressive approach was taken. And that was, in a sense, further bolstered after the Uri attack.
And you think the government has maintained the line there?
I think the government has maintained the line. I think the government has also been pragmatic in allowing the Indus Waters commissioners to meet. The government, today's comments by the External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj in Parliament about Gilgit-Baltistan are part of the same process of being assertive. Constitutionally, what she said is entirely valid. That's part of our position. The only hope I have is that they will maintain the stamina required to keep to this policy.
Consistency. Now, if our producers could just pull up the big questions we've been showing or to our viewers, and that, of course, is the central part of the theme. So I'll just borrow one of those questions we wrote earlier as central part of this particular discussion. I'll get closing comments from Professor Nalapat and perhaps if I can squeeze Dr. Swamy in as well. One of the questions we're asking Professor Nalapat is, of course, do these tweaks indicate that Modi's evolving still foreign policy is better suited for India's needs, its aspirations, its wants? Do you think a majority stable government has added to that clout that India has been looking for a very long time?
You know, the way I read it is, Modi is a practical person from a state that's known for its practicality. Dr. Swamy correctly said that the Americans are transactional people. Well, I think Modi is transactional also. Now, in the case of the Chinese, frankly, they have not delivered on NSG. They have not delivered on Masood Azhar. Despite the fact that India has more than delivered to them on Tibet and the Dalai Lama.
And the one China policy.
So the question is,
so forth, yeah.
how long are you going to make one-sided deliveries and get nothing back? So from that point of view, I think I welcome the fact that now we have a transactional policy. If you give, you get. And if you don't get, you don't give.
Dr. Sravan Kumar, please respond to that. And also our big questions, of course, one of them being staring down China, isolating Pakistan globally, which I think by consensus this panel will say it's been partially successful or completely successful. All this, even tweaking how we speak to US on matters of bilateral tension. Don't you think this policy perhaps is better suited, better equipped as India goes forward?
See, I think if the Indian policy, foreign policy would have been comprehensive and then appropriate enough, I mean, Dr. Swamy, I heard mentioning that, you know, they are building a naval base in Afghanistan and UPA has not achieved. I think UPA government very successfully has projected Pakistan as a rogue nation.
Not in Afghanistan,
and
Iran,
even to an extent that the America had to cancel the sale of the aircraft. You know, to that extent the emphasis was made. But Dr. Swamy or even some of the panelists who are now seeing that the foreign policy is a great policy of President Modi's government should answer the question that we are happy about building naval base in Afghanistan. But how should we talk about, what should we talk about if Pakistan and China is building a huge corridor? China is building a China-Pakistan corridor. Number two, the $10 billion are being spent in Gurdapur naval base by China, and building the huge military operations are being set up by China in Pakistan. Then we also should talk about if the foreign policy is very comprehensive, why is that there is a rift between India and Nepal today? Why is that we are not able to aggressively...
You know, those questions about the CPEC in particular, I believe are valid ones. They are areas of concern. No, Dr. Kumar, I understand. I'm kind of short on time here. I understand you've raised those valid points about the CPEC in particular, and I will use another debate, sir, at another given point in time, because I have to end this one right now. Time constraints. But I do hope the viewers had a fruitful, really informative discussion on how far India's foreign policy has moved, shifted, pivoted under Prime Minister Modi. Of course, at the end of the day, the Janta is the best judge. I must thank you, Dr. Kumar, for joining us, Ambassador Katju, Saurabh, Shukla, for joining us on The Nation at 9.